If you ever meet someone who knows your name before you say it, run. Don't ask how, don't stop to listen, just run. I didn't. And now, I don't think I'll ever sleep peacefully again. If this happened to you, what would you do? Before we continue, kindly give this video a like. It helps YouTube show this video to more people who love scary stories like you. If you enjoy my stories, tap subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And turn on your notifications because I've got a little surprise gift coming your way soon. Also, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I want our sleepy horror family to really connect. Now, grab your blanket, turn on the fan for that soothing background hum while you listen. Story 1. It happened 2 summers ago, on a night that felt too normal to end the way it did. I had just finished a late shift at the bookstore and was walking home through the park. It was that calm hour between dusk and full dark when the air feels soft and the crickets start their songs. I remember thinking about how empty the path was. The lampposts glowed with that weak orange light that barely touched the ground, and my footsteps sounded too loud against the gravel. The park had always been my shortcut. Cut my 20-minute walk down to 10. I'd used it hundreds of times, even at night. The thought of anything bad happening never crossed my mind. Not until that night. Halfway through the path, I saw someone standing near the fountain. He looked normal. Average height, dark jacket, hands in his pockets. I might not have thought twice about him, except that he was facing me directly, just standing there watching. I slowed my pace, trying to decide if I should turn around, but before I could, he called out my name. Lena. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, like he was saying it just for me. I froze where I was. My first thought was that I must know him somehow. Maybe a customer? A neighbor? I squinted, trying to recognize his face, but I didn't. Lena, you're late tonight, he said again. Still calm, like we'd been talking for years. I tried to keep my voice steady. Do I know you? He smiled. Not yet. I remember that moment clearly because the world seemed to pause. The crickets stopped. Even the fountain felt quieter. He started walking toward me, slow and deliberate. Every step he took made the space between us feel smaller than it should have. My instincts screamed to move, but I couldn't figure out how he knew my name. It wasn't on my bag or badge. I didn't have any ID visible. I've been waiting to meet you, he said, stopping about 5 feet away. That was enough for me. I turned and started walking back the way I came. Not running, just walking fast, hoping he'd get the message. But I could hear his footsteps behind me. Not close, but not far either. Just there. Don't go that way, Lena, he called after me. It's darker up ahead. I ignored him. My phone was dead, of course. I kept my eyes fixed on the path, trying to get to the streetlight that marked the exit. When I finally reached it, I glanced back. He was gone. Completely. The path was empty again. For a second, I convinced myself I imagined it. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I heard something wrong. But when I got home and opened my front door, my living room light was already on. I lived alone. First, I thought I'd left it that way by mistake. But then I saw something on my coffee table. A single folded piece of paper. Picked it up and opened it. Inside, in neat handwriting, was one sentence. I told you it's darker up ahead. I dropped the paper and ran to check my locks. Everything was still secure. No signs of a break-in. The window was closed. But when I looked out through the blinds, I saw him again, standing on the opposite side of the street under a street lamp, watching my apartment. I shut the blinds and called the police. They sent a patrol car, but by the time they arrived, he was gone. They searched the area, found no one. I showed them the note, but there were no fingerprints except mine. They suggested I stay somewhere else for the night, but I refused. I didn't want to run from my own home. Around 2 a.m., I started to relax. I convinced myself it was over. Maybe he'd followed someone else. Maybe it was a prank. I was lying in bed when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. A man's voice came through. Calm. Familiar. You locked the window this time, he said softly. Good girl. The call ended. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the dark. I didn't sleep that night. or the night after. I changed my number, moved to a different part of town, and told myself it was done. Months went by without incident. Then one morning, I stopped at a small diner for coffee before work. The waitress brought my cup and smiled. "It's already paid for," she said. "By who?" I asked. She pointed to a man sitting by the window. Black jacket, same posture. He raised his cup slightly, smiling like we were old friends. I didn't finish the coffee. I walked straight out, heart racing, pretending not to see the folded napkin he left on the counter. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. It said, "Told you we'd meet again." I never went back to that diner. I switched jobs, moved states, changed my name online and offline. Still, sometimes when I'm walking home and the streets are quiet, I hear it. Someone calling my name. Not shouting, not close, just enough to make me remember that night. Would you have turned around when someone called your name? Or would you have kept walking? Story 2. If you ever wake up and realize the people you love most have vanished, not just from your life, but from existence, don't try to find them. I did, and I wish I hadn't. The day started like any other Saturday. I remember the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen, the faint hum of the ceiling fan above me. My husband, Mark, usually made breakfast while our daughter, Lily, watched cartoons in the living room. It was our little weekend routine. But that morning, the house was silent, too still. I thought maybe they'd gone for a walk or to grab groceries, so I got up and checked the rooms. Lily's bed was neatly made. Her favorite stuffed bear was gone. Mark's shoes weren't by the door, but his car keys were on the counter. The silence stretched longer than it should have. I called out their names, expecting a reply from the next room. Nothing. The first thing I did was check my phone. No missed calls, no texts, just the regular stream of notifications. I tried calling Mark's number. It rang once, then cut off. When I tried again, I got an automated message. "This number is not in service." That didn't make sense. I'd spoken to him just last night. I tried Lily's tablet next, the one she used to watch videos. It was logged out of her profile. When I tried signing back in, it said the account didn't exist. I started to feel uneasy. Maybe it was some kind of glitch, I told myself. Maybe my phone had reset. But when I went to our photo album on the shelf, all the framed pictures of the three of us were different. Every single one. The wedding photo only showed me, standing in front of an empty arch. Lily's baby pictures? Gone. In their place were photos of me alone, smiling at blank spaces, my arms slightly raised like I was holding someone who wasn't there. That's when the panic started to crawl in. I opened Facebook. My relationship status said, single. My old posts about our wedding, our vacations, Lily's birthdays, all gone. Every tag, every photo, every memory wiped clean. I drove to my parents' house next. I don't remember much about that drive except that I kept checking my rearview mirror, hoping to see Mark's car following me. When I got there, I ran to the door. My mother opened it, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Mom, where's Mark? Where's Lily?" I asked, breathless. She frowned. "Who?" "Mark, my husband. Lily, our daughter." Her expression didn't change. "Sweetheart, you've never been married. Are you okay?" I laughed at first, thinking it was some kind of cruel joke. But she looked genuinely confused, like she didn't recognize the names. I ran past her into the living room. All our old family pictures lined the wall. In every single one, I was there, alone. No Mark, no Lily. I tried to call my best friend, Julia. When she answered, her voice sounded normal until I asked about Mark. "You mean your ex from college?" she said. "You two broke up years ago, remember?" "No, Julia. My husband. We live together. We have a daughter." She hesitated. "You don't have a daughter, Claire. You've never had one." I hung up, couldn't breathe. It felt like my memories were fighting against reality itself. I rushed back home and searched every inch of the house. Their clothes were gone. Their toothbrushes, shoes, everything. But in the back of the closet, I found something. Lily's old drawing, taped to the wall behind a box. A stick figure family. Mommy, Daddy, and her. She'd written our names in big, uneven letters, me, Mommy, Daddy. That drawing shouldn't exist if they didn't. That night, I didn't sleep. I scrolled through every photo I could find on old drives, USBs, emails. Each one had been altered. Every memory that included them was erased. And yet, I could still hear Lily's laugh in my head. The way she'd mispronounce pajamas as pajamies. I could still remember the scar on Mark's hand from when he cut himself fixing the fence. Those things were too real to be fake. The next morning, I went to the local police. They took my report but looked at me like I was unstable. They said there was no record of anyone named Mark with my last name, no birth certificate for a Lily born to me. My neighbors swore I lived alone. One officer even said, "Maybe you're remembering a dream." I knew it wasn't a dream. I went home and sat in Lily's old room. I don't know how long I stayed there before I noticed something odd. The wall. It looked slightly off, like the paint was newer in one patch. I pulled at the wallpaper and found a door-sized outline beneath. I had never seen that before. Behind it was a small, empty space, not big enough for a room, more like a crawl space. And inside, on the floor, was a single item. Lily's missing teddy bear. Its fur was matted, and there was a small note tucked under its arm. I opened it with shaking hands. It said, "You weren't supposed to wake up." I dropped the note and stumbled back. The air felt wrong. I ran to the living room, ready to get out of the house, but my reflection in the mirror made me stop. It wasn't quite me. My hair was shorter. My face looked slightly younger, different. Then, behind me in the reflection, I saw them, Mark and Lily, standing just out of reach. They didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. I turned around, and the room was empty again. It's been 3 months now. I've tried therapy, medication, hypnosis, nothing helps. The world around me accepts a version of my life that I don't belong in. Sometimes, I hear a child laughing outside at night, and I swear it's her. I've stopped trying to explain. I keep the teddy bear on my bed now. Sometimes, when I wake up, I think I hear someone whisper, "You weren't supposed to wake up. Would you still try to find your family if everyone told you they never existed?" Story 3. If you ever see someone who looks exactly like you, down to the smallest detail, the same scar, the same birthmark, the same nervous smile, don't approach them. Don't wave. Don't speak. Pretend you didn't see them, because once they notice you, it's already too late. Started the day I moved into my new apartment complex. I'd been looking for a quiet place after my breakup, somewhere peaceful, where I could focus on myself again. The building was small, just 12 units, with thin hallways that smelled faintly of bleach and cheap paint. The landlord seemed kind, the rent was reasonable, and my neighbors mostly kept to themselves. It was perfect. The first few nights were calm. I worked remotely, took evening walks, and tried to rebuild some kind of normal routine. But on my 5th day there, while I was returning from the grocery store, I saw her. She was standing outside the building, fumbling with a key at the entrance. I froze because she looked exactly like me. Same hair color, same build, even the same denim jacket I was wearing, though hers looked slightly worn, like an older version. She turned her head, and I felt my stomach twist. Her face was mine. Not similar, identical. She noticed me too, and for a few seconds we both just stood there, staring. I tried to laugh it off. "Wow, that's freaky," I said, trying to sound casual. "You look just like me." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I know." That was all she said before slipping her key into the door and disappearing inside. I stood there, still holding my grocery bag, my mind racing. Maybe she was some distant relative? A weird coincidence? I even took a selfie to compare later, but every time I looked at it, something felt wrong. Like my reflection in the photo didn't quite match anymore. The next day, I asked the landlord about her. "Oh, you must mean the new tenant in 2B, he said. "Moved in last week. I think her name's Eliza." That was my middle name. He said she'd given him the same last name as mine. When I asked to see her lease, half joking, he just laughed. "You two must be cousins or something," he said. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing faint noises through the wall we shared, footsteps, humming, even someone typing on a laptop. I finally knocked on the wall out of frustration. A second later, I heard a faint knockback, perfectly timed, like an echo. The next morning, I went to get my mail, and my name was printed twice on the same mailbox. I stared at it for a long time. Same handwriting, same spelling. I decided I'd confront her that evening. When I knocked on her door, she answered immediately, as if she'd been waiting. Her apartment looked exactly like mine. Same furniture, same curtains, even the same photo of my parents on the wall. I blinked. "How did you get that picture?" She tilted her head slightly. "It came with the place." Her voice was soft, calm. My voice, exactly. I tried to smile, but my throat was tight. "This is insane. You look like me, talk like me, you even have my stuff." She nodded slowly. "That's how it's supposed to be." "What? You shouldn't have moved here," she said. This was my turn. I laughed nervously, thinking she was joking, but she didn't laugh back. I left her apartment quickly and locked myself in mine. For the next few days, I tried to avoid her. But every time I looked out my window, I'd see her, standing across the courtyard, staring up at me. She didn't wave or smile, just stood there watching. Then, strange things started happening inside my apartment. My toothbrush would be wet when I hadn't used it. My coffee mug would be sitting on the counter half full when I was sure I hadn't made any. Once, I came home from work to find my front door unlocked and my reflection already staring back at me from the mirror, except I hadn't reached it yet. I finally called the police. They searched her apartment but said no one lived there. The place was completely empty. No furniture, no clothes, no trace of anyone. The officer even looked confused. "You sure this is the right unit?" he asked. After they left, I went back to my place, trying to convince myself I was losing my mind. I checked the mail again. Only one name this time. Mine. That night, around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of humming. The same tune I used to hum as a child when I couldn't sleep. It was coming from the mirror. I sat up and saw her standing inside it, her hand pressed against the glass. Her lips moved, but there was no sound. Then I realized the humming wasn't coming from her at all. It was coming from me. My mouth was moving without my control, matching her exactly. I scrambled back, knocking over the lamp. The light flickered, and in that split second, she smiled, a wide, wrong smile, and whispered something I couldn't hear. The glass rippled, like water, and her hand started to come through. I ran from the room, slamming the door behind me. When I came back minutes later with my phone light, the mirror was empty. My reflection looked normal again, but a faint handprint remained on the surface. The next morning, the landlord told me apartment 2B was being renovated. He said no one had lived there for years. When I asked about the woman I saw, he looked at me strangely and said, "You're the only tenant who's ever complained about that unit." I moved out that same week. Sometimes, when I walk past mirrors in stores or public bathrooms, I see it again. Her face looking back a moment too long, lips moving just after mine stop. Would you have knocked on that neighbor's door? Or would you have pretended you never saw her? Story 4. I've worked the night shift at a small-town gas station for almost 3 years now. It's the kind of job no one really wants but takes because it's quiet, easy, and pays just enough to scrape by. I usually don't see a soul after 11 p.m. Just the hum of the freezer and the occasional sound of a car whooshing by on the empty road. But last Friday, something happened that made me question everything I know about that place. Started out like any other night. I came in at 10 p.m., clocked in, grabbed a soda, and set up my little playlist behind the counter. Around 1 a.m., I went out to restock the shelves. I always check the mirrors to make sure no one walks in while I'm in the aisles. The cameras cover every corner of the store, and I keep an eye on them through the small monitor next to the register. At 1:42 a.m., I noticed something strange. On the monitor, there was a man standing behind the counter. I froze. That's my spot. The camera angle was clear, it was the front counter camera. The man was wearing the same navy blue uniform shirt I had on, the same reflective name tag, the same black hat. He was standing exactly how I usually stand, head tilted slightly down, leaning on the counter. But I was in the back of the store, watching him through the screen. I ran to the front. No one was there. The door hadn't opened. The bell didn't chime. But the second I stepped behind the counter, the monitor flickered. For half a second, I saw him again, standing in the exact spot I was standing in, but this time, his face was turned toward the camera. It was my face. I turned off the monitor and told myself it was some weird glitch. I didn't look again for the next hour. At around 2:45 a.m., I started hearing the sound of the scanner beeping. The same sound it makes when you ring up a purchase. I peeked from behind the snack aisle. The scanner light was flickering on and off, as if someone was running items over it. I shouted, "Hello? We're closed." No answer, just more beeps. I walked slowly toward the register, every step measured. When I reached the counter, I saw items scattered: gum, chips, a lighter, 2 bottles of soda. The kind of things customers usually buy. The register screen showed total $8.46, but no one was there. Then I looked at the monitor again. There he was, me, standing on the other side of the counter, bagging the items. He looked up at the camera and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was that kind of grin you'd see on someone who knows something you don't. Then he picked up the bag and walked toward the door. The real door, the one right in front of me, opened on its own. The chime rang. Cold air rushed in. But there was no one visible leaving the store. By the time my shift ended at 6 a.m., I had already decided to quit. I told my manager I wasn't coming back. He didn't look surprised. He just sighed and said, "You saw him, didn't you?" I didn't ask what he meant. I just walked out. I drove past the station last night out of curiosity. The lights were still on. Through the window, I saw a figure behind the counter. Navy blue shirt, black hat, head tilted down, leaning on the counter just like I used to. Would you still take a night shift alone after this? Story 5. It started with a simple message: "Nice place." No name, no profile picture. Just those 2 words in a text that came at 11:56 p.m. I assumed it was a wrong number, so I ignored it. But a minute later, another message came in. A photo of my living room. My heart didn't jump. I didn't scream. I just stared at it, confused, trying to process how someone got a picture from inside my home when I lived alone. First, I thought it was a prank. Maybe one of my friends had stopped by earlier and was messing with me. But the photo was recent. The TV was still on, showing the same late-night cooking show I'd been half-watching. I looked around. The door was locked, the windows shut, everything in its place. I checked the hallway. Nothing. Then another text came in. This time it said, "Don't bother looking. I like the view from here." I could see my reflection on the TV screen, standing frozen in the middle of the room. That reflection looked back at me like it was someone else. The silence was so complete that the hum of the refrigerator sounded like static in my ears. I grabbed my phone and called my friend Caleb. He lived 10 minutes away. "Man, someone's messing with me," I said, pacing the room. "They just sent me pictures from inside my house." He didn't take me seriously at first. "You sure it's not one of those spam links? Don't click anything." I didn't. "These are real photos." He could hear the panic in my voice, so he said he was coming over. While I waited, I sat on the couch watching the front door. Every few minutes, another text came in. A picture of the hallway, the kitchen, my bedroom. The photos were coming in sequence, as if someone was moving through my house. But the strangest part was that I couldn't hear a sound. No footsteps, no doors creaking, nothing. When Caleb arrived, he searched the place top to bottom. Closets, bathroom, attic, even under the bed. No one was there. He laughed a little, trying to make light of it. "Maybe someone's got access to your cloud camera or something. Change your passwords." I didn't even have security cameras. We decided to stay up and see if more messages came in. For an hour, nothing happened. Then, just as Caleb was about to leave, my phone buzzed again. Another photo. This one showed both of us sitting on the couch. It had been taken from the kitchen doorway, less than 10 feet away. Caleb's face drained of color. He whispered, "You're joking, right?" I turned off all the lights and we sat in darkness, listening. I could feel my pulse in my throat. Then came a faint click, like the sound of a camera shutter. We both looked toward the kitchen. Nothing moved. We waited another minute, then another click came, closer this time. Caleb grabbed a kitchen knife. We crept toward the hallway, and that's when we noticed the basement door was slightly open. I never used the basement. It was where the previous owner had stored old furniture and junk. We stood still, and I could hear slow breathing coming from below, long, measured breaths, like someone deliberately trying to stay quiet. Caleb whispered, "Call the police." I dialed, but before the call connected, my phone vibrated again. Another photo. It was of me holding the phone to my ear, taken from behind. Whoever it was, they were right there. Caleb yanked the basement door open and shouted, "Get out of here!" But all we saw were the wooden steps leading into darkness. The police arrived 15 minutes later. They searched every inch of the house, including the basement. No one was there, but they found footprints, small, bare footprints leading from the back wall of the basement to the stairs. The back wall had a narrow vent opening, just big enough for someone to squeeze through. After the officers left, I went to stay with Caleb for a few days. Couldn't sleep. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. On the third night, I got another message from the same number. It said, "You shouldn't have brought them in." Attached was a photo, Caleb's living room, with both of us asleep on the couch. We tore through his apartment looking for cameras or hidden devices. Nothing. His windows were locked from the inside. The landlord confirmed that no one else had access. We even went to the police again, but all they could say was to block the number and report suspicious activity. I got a new phone and new number the next day. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. I moved back into my place and started to feel normal again. Then one night, around 3:17 a.m., I woke up to the sound of a soft vibration on my nightstand. I didn't want to look, but I did. The message said, "Miss me." Attached was a picture of me, sleeping, taken from the end of my bed. I left that house before sunrise. I didn't even pack. I drove to my sister's place 2 states away. She thought I was overreacting, but she let me crash on her couch. I didn't tell her much. I just needed to feel safe. 3 nights later, she found a flash drive on her front porch. It had my name written on it in black marker. Against my better judgment, we plugged it into her laptop. There were only 5 photos inside. The first 4 were the same ones I'd already seen before. My living room, my hallway, me and Caleb on the couch. The 5th photo, though, was new. It was of my sister's living room. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Behind her, in the reflection of the window, was someone standing, in the same dark hoodie, holding a phone up as if taking a picture. The timestamp on the file said it was taken 5 minutes before we found the flash drive. We called the police immediately. By the time they arrived, there was nothing to find. The next day, I changed my number again, deleted my social media, and moved out of state for good. That was 6 months ago. Last night, a package showed up at my new apartment. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, my new bedroom. The caption written on the back said, "Nice place. What would you do if someone kept sending you photos from inside your own home?" Story 6. When I was 13, I escaped a man who was later confirmed to be a serial killer. It's not something I talk about often. Most people who know me think I just had a bad childhood and that I'm overly cautious about safety. They don't know that for years, I've lived with the memory of that night, of his smell, his voice, his shoes squeaking on the wet ground as I ran for my life. I thought I'd finally moved on. But last night, I got a message that made everything come back like it never left. It happened in the summer of 2008. My family lived in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone left their doors unlocked and waved to strangers. One evening, I was walking home from a friend's house when an old blue pickup truck slowed beside me. The driver rolled down the window. He had a calm voice, polite even. He said he was lost and needed directions. I told him the main road was straight ahead, but he kept asking questions, smiling too much. Something about his tone made my stomach twist. I started walking faster. He called out again, asking if I wanted a ride since it was getting dark. I said no and broke into a jog. The truck didn't move at first. Then I heard the engine rev and the gravel crunch as it rolled forward. I remember thinking maybe I was overreacting, but then the truck's headlights flicked off, and I heard the door open. That was when I ran. I cut across the woods behind the church, the fastest way home. I could hear him following, his footsteps uneven, his breath sharp. I tripped over a root and hit the ground hard, scraping my hands. Then a beam of light swept across the trees, his flashlight. I remember hearing him say something like, "It's okay, kid. I won't hurt you." I didn't believe him. I crawled behind a fallen log and held my breath as the light passed inches above my head. He stood there for what felt like forever, muttering to himself. Then, finally, the footsteps faded. I didn't tell anyone right away. I was scared my parents wouldn't believe me. But a week later, the news broke that a man had been caught trying to abduct another child in the next county. They showed his face on TV, and I recognized him immediately. Same blue truck, same face, same soft-spoken voice. His name was Raymond Burke, and he'd already been linked to 3 disappearances. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. For years, I tried to forget him. Therapy helped. I changed towns, changed my number, even changed my name legally when I turned 18. I never wanted to risk being found. Life eventually went on. I got a job, started dating, built something like normal. Until last night. It was almost midnight. I was scrolling through messages on my phone when a new chat request appeared from an unknown number. The name just said Ray. I hesitated before opening it. The message said, "You've grown up." No emojis, no punctuation, just those words. I froze. Couldn't be him. He was supposed to be in prison. I searched his name online, but the latest articles were from years ago. I found an old prison record. He was still listed as incarcerated. I told myself it was someone trolling me. Maybe they'd read about the case somewhere. But then I got another message. This time it was a photo. It showed the outside of my apartment building, taken from the parking lot. The light in my living room window was on. I didn't move for a full minute. Then I turned off the lamp and crawled to the window. There was no one outside. The street was empty, quiet except for the hum of a distant engine. I called the police and explained what happened. They came, looked around, and said there was no sign of anyone. I showed them the messages. One officer said it could be a sick prank, someone using an old story to scare me. They took a report and left. I tried to sleep on the couch, but around 2 a.m., another message came in. It said, "You still run funny." That was the exact thing he said to me when he was caught years ago. I remember reading that line in the police transcript. No one else would know those words. I didn't reply. I just sat there shaking. Then another text arrived. "Don't hide this time." Attached was another photo, this one from my apartment hallway. It showed my front door. I grabbed a kitchen knife and called 911 again. When they arrived, they found muddy footprints outside the door. Bare footprints. The police stayed until morning, but by then whoever it was had disappeared. They're running a trace on the number, but so far, it leads nowhere. This morning, I called the prison to confirm if Raymond Burke was still alive. The officer on the phone said something that made my stomach drop. He said Burke had died of a heart attack 3 days ago. His body was found in his cell. No visitors, no calls. Nothing unusual. He was gone. So who's texting me? Tonight, I checked my apartment again. Every lock, every window. I moved my furniture so I could sleep near the front door with the lights on. But as I sat down, another message appeared on my phone. This one said, "Took you long enough to grow up." Attached was a short video clip. I opened it even though I knew I shouldn't have. It was footage of me sitting on my couch, taken through my living room window from just 5 minutes earlier. The police still think it's a prank, but I know what I saw. I know his voice, even when I can't hear it. Sometimes, when the apartment is quiet, I think I can feel him standing just outside, waiting for me to make a sound. Every night since, I've been getting new messages. Photos from different angles, closer each time. No words now, just the images. I reported them all, but the sender changes numbers every night. It's been a week, and I haven't left my apartment. I don't know who's out there or how they know where I live. All I know is that last night, the final message didn't come with a picture. Came with a recording. It was a voice. His voice. Calm. Slow. Just like I remember. He said, "You ran once. Let's see how far you get this time. Would you run? Or would you stay and face whatever's waiting at the door?" Story 7. I used to think children had imaginary friends because their minds were creative and wild. My daughter Lily was no different. At 5 years old, she would sit on the edge of her bed whispering to someone who wasn't there, or set a second plate at the table and giggle as if someone was eating with her. My wife and I would just smile at each other and chalk it up to childhood play. But lately, the things Lily says about her friend have started to make me wonder if there's something else happening inside our house. It began 3 months ago. We had just moved into a rental home on the outskirts of town. An old house with creaky floors, tall windows, and a basement we never used. The first week went fine, except for Lily's new habit of setting up tea parties with an empty chair across from her. She said his name was Mr. Cole. When I asked what he looked like, she said he was tall, wore a black coat, and always smiled but didn't blink much. That description made me uncomfortable, but I didn't want to scare her. One evening, while tucking her into bed, Lily asked if Mr. Cole could have a blanket because he gets cold when it rains. I played along and handed her an extra blanket to put on the floor. I told myself it was harmless. But that night, I woke up at 2:14 a.m. to the sound of soft humming coming from her room. When I went in, she was sitting upright, staring at the corner of the room, humming a tune I'd never heard before. She stopped as soon as she saw me. "Daddy," she whispered. "Mr. Cole says you shouldn't come in without knocking." I checked every inch of that room. Closet, under the bed, behind the curtains. Nothing. Lily just kept smiling at the corner like she knew something I didn't. The next morning, she drew a picture at breakfast. It showed our family, me, her mom, and her. But behind us was a tall man with no eyes, just dark circles where they should be. He had a hand on Lily's shoulder. She said, "Mr. Cole told me to draw this." A few nights later, I was in the living room when the baby monitor crackled. We still used it because Lily sometimes got night terrors. I heard her talking in a low voice. At first I thought she was sleep-talking, but then a second voice answered. It was too faint to make out words, but it was deep and steady. I ran to her room, but when I opened the door, she was alone, sitting cross-legged on the floor. I asked who she was talking to, and she said, "Mr. Cole said you can't hear him because you're not special." That sent a chill through me. I unplugged the monitor and brought her to our room. Over the next week, things escalated. Her toys started ending up in strange places, lined up perfectly along the windowsill or stacked into a pyramid in the hallway. One morning, her bed was turned around completely, facing the opposite direction from the night before. She was still asleep on it, clutching her stuffed rabbit. When I asked her about it, she said, "Mr. Cole wanted me to see the door." I started researching the house. It had been built in the 1940s. The previous tenant had moved out abruptly after only 4 months. No record of why. I found an old article online about a man named Cole Simmons who had been accused of kidnapping children back in the 1970s but was never convicted. He'd lived 3 streets over. The photo matched Lily's drawing almost exactly. The coat, the hollow eyes, even the smile. One night, I set up a camera in Lily's room, hidden on her bookshelf. I told her it was a magic nightlight so she wouldn't be suspicious. At 3:03 a.m., the footage showed her sitting up in bed, eyes wide open, talking to the corner. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then, a shadow stretched across the wall behind her, long and tall, but no one was there to cast it. When I went to wake her the next morning, she had dark circles under her eyes. She said Mr. Cole didn't like the new light in her room. That day at daycare, she bit another child for trying to take her toy. She'd never done anything like that before. I wanted to move, but my wife insisted we couldn't afford it. She thought Lily was just acting out because of the new environment. I didn't tell her about the camera footage. Last week, Lily started waking up with bruises on her arms. She said Mr. Cole was teaching her how to stay still. That was the last straw. I called a friend who's a police officer and asked if he'd come over off duty to check the place. He didn't find anyone, but as he was leaving, he said something strange. "Your kid kept staring at the doorway while I was talking to you," he said, like she was waiting for someone to come in. 2 nights ago, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing. It was a text from an unknown number. It said, "She's mine now." Attached was a photo of Lily's room taken from above, as if someone had been standing on the ceiling. Lily was asleep in her bed. I ran into her room, but she was gone. I tore the house apart, bathroom, basement, closets. Nothing. My wife called the police. They searched everywhere. Then we heard her voice coming from the living room. She was standing there, holding hands with no one. She looked up at me and smiled. "Mr. Cole said I can stay if you stop looking for him." That night, I sat awake with her on my lap until she fell asleep. When I looked up, every window in the house had fog on the inside, as if someone had pressed their face close to the glass. In the center of each fogged window was a single handprint. Today, Lily hasn't spoken much. She just stares at corners, waiting. I keep checking my phone for more messages. Nothing yet. But every time I walk past a mirror, I swear I see someone standing behind me for just a split second. Tall, dark coat, not blinking. Would you stay in this house? Or would you run without looking back? Story 8. It was a rainy afternoon when I decided to cut through the woods on my way home from work. The shortcut wasn't much faster, but it was quieter than the main road, and lately, I'd been craving solitude. The path wound through old pines and oaks, the kind of forest that never really brightens even in daylight. Halfway through, something caught my eye near a cluster of moss-covered rocks. A small black USB drive, half buried in the mud. I picked it up, brushing off the dirt. It had no markings, no keychain, nothing to identify it. Just a plain, scratched-up thumb drive. I slipped it into my pocket, telling myself I'd throw it away later, but by the time I got home, curiosity got the better of me. I plugged it into my laptop. First, nothing happened. Then a single folder popped up on my desktop. It was titled Home. Inside were 23 video files, each named only with a timestamp. No dates, no context. The first video was only 47 seconds long. It showed the inside of a small, dimly lit room. In the middle was a wooden chair, and on it, a child's doll with no eyes. There was no sound except for a faint humming. The second video was longer. It showed someone walking through a forest at night, breathing heavily. The camera tilted down to reveal bare feet splashing through mud. Then the person whispered something I couldn't quite make out. Something about keeping it hidden. By the third video, my hands were shaking. It was filmed inside what looked like an empty apartment. The camera panned across the kitchen, the living room, then stopped on a door at the end of the hall. The door creaked open to reveal a person tied to a chair, their head hanging down. The video cut off abruptly. I should have stopped there, but I didn't. I clicked the fourth file. This time, the footage was from a hidden camera inside a living room. It was my living room. My heart didn't race, I didn't scream, I just stared. The video showed me sitting on my own couch the night before, scrolling through my phone. The camera angle was from the corner of the ceiling, but I had no cameras installed. I ejected the USB immediately and unplugged it, but a notification popped up on my screen. Downloading files, 1 of 3. My cursor froze. I couldn't close the window. Then my laptop camera light turned on by itself. I slammed the laptop shut. The light went off, but my phone buzzed on the table. A new message from an unknown number appeared. "You found it." I tried calling the number. It didn't ring, just static. Then another message came. "You weren't supposed to." Attached was a photo of me sitting at my desk, taken seconds ago. I grabbed the USB, stuffed it in an envelope, and drove to the police station. The officer at the front desk looked at me like I was crazy when I explained. He plugged it into their computer. This time, the drive was empty. No files, no folder, nothing. "Are you sure you didn't imagine this?" he asked. I left the station feeling like I was losing my mind. That night, I barely slept. Around 3 a.m., my phone vibrated again. Another message, Too late. This time, no photo. Just 2 words. The next morning, I woke up to find muddy footprints on my kitchen floor. They led from the back door to the hallway, then stopped at my bedroom door. My locks were still intact. Windows closed. Nothing was missing. I decided to go back to the woods, to the spot where I'd found the USB. Maybe there was something else there, some clue. When I reached the cluster of rocks, I found a small hole dug into the earth. Inside was another USB, identical to the first, but with a piece of tape on it. Written in black marker were the words, "Watch ME." This time, I didn't bring it home. I drove to a friend's place and asked if I could use his old laptop. We plugged it in together. Only one video was on this drive. It was a shaky recording of someone walking through a forest, the same forest we were in. The camera turned toward the ground, showing my shoe prints. Then it looked up and zoomed in on me, right there, standing in front of the rocks. The video ended. My friend stared at me, pale. "This isn't funny," he said. We drove back to my house together, but the whole way I kept glancing in the rearview mirror. Every time, I thought I saw someone walking along the side of the road, just at the edge of the trees. But when I slowed down, no one was there. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Around 2:45 a.m., I heard a faint humming outside my window, the same sound from the first video. I peeked through the blinds. Nothing, just my dark backyard. But when I turned back to my bed, my phone was lit up on the nightstand. Another message, "You're next." I left town the next day. I stayed with my sister 2 states away, but the messages kept coming. They always said the same thing, "Home." I threw my phone away, bought a new one, and stopped checking email. For a week, it was quiet. Then last night, as I was brushing my teeth, my sister called from the living room. "Hey," she said, "why is there a flash drive on the couch?" I went in. There it was, the same black USB sitting neatly on the cushion. My sister hadn't touched it. There was no sign of a break-in. I didn't open it. I burned it in the fireplace. But as the plastic melted, my phone vibrated on the counter. A new message from an unknown number appeared. "You can't burn what's already inside." Attached was a video file. It showed me sleeping in my sister's guest room, filmed from the doorway, less than 5 minutes earlier. Would you have opened the USB, or would you have left it in the woods? Story 9. The mirror came from an old estate sale on the outskirts of town. It was tall, framed with carved wood that looked like twisting vines, and the seller said it had belonged to a 19th century family who'd lived in the mansion before it burned down. I didn't believe in superstitions or haunted objects, so when she offered it to me for just $20, I thought I'd found a bargain. I took it home and placed it in the hallway across from my bedroom door. It made the narrow space look larger, and for the first few days I didn't notice anything strange. But then one night, around 1 a.m., I got up to get some water. As I passed by, I caught a glimpse of something in the mirror, my reflection but slightly delayed. I froze, watching. When I raised my hand, my reflection followed a second later. I blinked hard and turned on the light, but everything looked normal again. I convinced myself it was exhaustion. But the next night, it happened again. This time, I noticed that my reflection wasn't just delayed, it was different. The expression on my face in the mirror didn't match mine. My reflection looked tired, hollow-eyed, almost like it had aged. By the third night, I stopped walking past the hallway after dark. But every time I closed my bedroom door, I could still see the faint glint of the mirror through the crack, reflecting the darkness behind me. I started draping a cloth over it, but each morning, I'd wake up to find the cloth on the floor. On the 4th night, I decided to record it. I set up my phone on the shelf opposite the mirror before I went to bed. Around 2:14 a.m., I woke to a thud. The house was silent except for the faint creak of floorboards outside my room. I checked my phone in the morning. The video was 2 hours long. First, nothing happened. Then, around 2 a.m., the reflection in the mirror began to move. The cloth fell off by itself. My reflection stepped out of the frame. I couldn't breathe watching it. My reflection walked out of the mirror, turned toward my bedroom door, and stopped. I could hear my recorded self sleeping off-screen. The figure then smiled and reached for the doorknob. I stopped the video there. I didn't want to see more. I left the house immediately and called a friend to come stay with me. He didn't believe me, of course, but he agreed to spend the night. We moved the mirror into the living room so I wouldn't have to see it from my room. At around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my friend screaming. I ran into the living room, but he was gone. The mirror was there, uncovered, and in it, I could see him standing behind me, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. I turned around, but no one was there. When I looked back at the mirror, the reflection was empty. Know me, know him, nothing but the dark room. I called his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. His car was still parked outside. I called the police, told them my friend had gone missing. They searched the house, the woods behind it, everything. No trace. They asked about the mirror. I told them it was just an old piece of furniture. They didn't take it. After that, I tried to avoid looking at it altogether, but every time I passed by, I could feel it, like it was watching. Sometimes, if I moved quickly, I could see a flicker of movement inside. Not a reflection, but a shadow. It didn't move like me. A few nights later, I woke to a whisper. It came from the hallway. My name drawn out like a sigh. I sat up, heart pounding. The mirror was uncovered again. From my bed, I could see something faint glowing on its surface. Handprints, smudged from the inside. I ran and threw a blanket over it again. This time, I dragged it to the backyard. I poured lighter fluid on the wood frame and set it on fire. The flames burned high, the glass cracking from the heat. But when the fire died, the mirror wasn't destroyed. The frame was charred, but the glass was untouched. When I looked closer, I saw something that made my stomach twist. There were faces in the reflection. Dozens of them. Some old, some young, all faint and blurry, as though trapped beneath the surface. And in the center, I saw my friend. I called a local antique expert the next day and described the mirror. The man went silent for a moment before asking where I got it. I told him about the estate sale. He said the mirror was likely from the old Watterson house, the same one that had burned down in 1893. According to local legends, the family who lived there had performed rituals to capture their reflections, believing it would grant them immortality. They called it the Glass Gate. The house caught fire during one of the rituals. The only thing that survived was the mirror. The legend said whoever possessed it would eventually become one of its faces. I didn't sleep that night. I took the mirror to a lake 2 towns away and sank it. I watched as it disappeared into the water, the glass glinting once before vanishing completely. For the next few weeks, everything seemed normal again. No more whispers, no more flickering lights. Then one evening, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of the lake. The surface was still, except for one thing. A black frame floating halfway submerged, the glass gleaming faintly under the moonlight. I deleted the photo and blocked the number. But that didn't stop the dreams. Every night, I'd find myself standing by the lake, staring down into the water. And in the reflection, I could see the mirror again, with my own face pressed against the inside of the glass, pounding to get out. Last night, when I looked in my bathroom mirror, I noticed something strange. For a split second, my reflection didn't move when I did. It smiled before I did. Now I've covered every mirror in the house. But I know it's only a matter of time. Because sometimes, late at night, I can hear faint tapping, not from outside, but from behind the glass. Story 10. I've lived in the same house for almost 9 years. Small place, out on the edge of town, nothing fancy but home. Every morning I leave for work at the same time, take the same 2-lane highway, same side streets, same driveway. My routine is as predictable as a metronome. So when my phone's GPS suddenly stopped working one night while I was driving back home, I didn't think much of it. I knew the way. I didn't need a map. It was just after 11:30 p.m. The rain was coming down in thick sheets, my windshield wipers struggling to keep up. I was tired from a late shift and eager to get home. But about 15 minutes from my neighborhood, I got a notification that my location couldn't be determined. The map went blank except for a single dot. It didn't even show the roads anymore, just a gray void with my dot floating in the middle. I shook it off and kept driving. The roads looked familiar at first. Same gas station, same rusting water tower on the corner. But after a few miles, things started to feel off. Street signs I didn't recognize. Trees where there shouldn't have been any. Even the air felt thicker somehow. Finally, I pulled up to where my house should have been. Same turnoff. Same gravel road. My headlights illuminated the area ahead, and my stomach dropped. There was nothing there. Just an open field. No driveway, no mailbox, no porch light waiting to guide me. Only tall grass swaying in the rain and a few scattered fence posts. I slammed the brakes and sat there for a moment, staring. My GPS chimed back to life. You have arrived at your destination. The calm, robotic voice sounded mocking now. I looked around again. Empty. Completely empty. I reversed and drove a little further, thinking maybe I'd taken the wrong turn. But every landmark was exactly where it should have been. The cracked pavement. The old oak tree at the bend. This was my street. But my house gone. I parked and got out. Rain soaking through my clothes immediately. My boots sank slightly into the wet ground as I stepped forward. The place where my porch should have been was just mud and grass. I bent down and touched the earth. No foundation. No sign of anything ever being there. Not even tire tracks where my car usually sat. My phone buzzed. A notification. Unknown number. The message read, "It's still here, just not for you." I spun around, scanning the field. No one. Only the sound of rain hitting metal somewhere far off. Another buzz. Same number. "Don't turn around." My heart hammered. I didn't know why, but I obeyed. I kept my eyes fixed on the empty field, gripping my phone like a lifeline. Slowly, the rain started to lighten, and that's when I heard it. A faint creak, like a door opening. I blinked, and for a second, I saw it. My house, standing exactly where it should be. Porch light glowing, curtains drawn. Chimney puffing faint smoke into the night air. It was like a photograph flashed over reality. And just as quickly, it vanished again, leaving only the empty field. Another text came through. "It's choosing." Couldn't breathe. My shoes felt glued to the earth. In the reflection of my phone screen, I thought I saw someone behind me. Tall, thin, standing perfectly still. But when I turned, there was no one. Only rain. I ran back to my car and locked the doors. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the keys. I started the engine and floored it, not looking back. The GPS rerouted me, showing roads again, but not the ones I knew. Every turn took me deeper into streets I'd never seen before. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, I found myself back on the main highway. Familiar lights, familiar signs. My heart began to slow. I followed the route home again, this time ignoring the GPS completely. When I turned onto my street, my house was there. Porch light glowing, driveway wet from the rain, exactly as it always was. I parked and sat there, staring at it. Was it ever gone? Had I imagined everything? I walked to the porch, touched the doorframe. Solid wood. My welcome mat. My keys fit the lock perfectly. Inside, everything was just as I'd left it. But there was one difference. In the hallway, on the wall opposite my bedroom, hung a small, weathered sign I'd never seen before. It was wooden, hand-painted, and it read, "You were chosen. Stay inside after dark." I ripped it down and threw it in the trash, but I can't stop thinking about it. Because last night, when I drove home again, my GPS glitched at the exact same spot. And for a moment, in the rearview mirror, I saw nothing behind me but a dark field stretching for miles. Now, when I stand at my bedroom window at night, I swear I can see it flicker. My house, my yard, my street, like an image on a screen about to go black. And sometimes, if I stare long enough, I catch a glimpse of the empty field again. And someone standing in the middle of it, watching. Story 11. Started about 2 weeks ago. At exactly 3 a.m., my phone would ring. Not 2:59, not 3:01. Right at 3 o'clock. I'm not the type who wakes up easily, but that sound always pulled me from sleep. The first time it happened, I thought it was some random scam call or a wrong number. But when I reached for my phone and saw the screen, my stomach turned. The name on the caller ID wasn't unknown or some random number. It said my name, my full name, my number. I stared at it until it stopped ringing. My hands trembled as I checked my call log. It really was my number. Outgoing call. Duration, midnight. It was like I had called myself. I turned my phone off and tried to sleep again. But I didn't. I lay awake until sunrise, staring at the dark ceiling, waiting for something else to happen. The next night, I left my phone on silent, but I still woke up at 3 a.m. I don't know if it was some instinct or the faint buzz of vibration, but my eyes shot open. My phone glowed on the nightstand. Same thing. My name. My number. I reached out and answered this time. I didn't say anything at first. Neither did the caller. Then I heard it. Breathing. Slow, steady, almost deliberate. Like someone trying not to be heard. I whispered, "Who is this?" The breathing stopped. The line went dead. On the third night, I decided to record it. I set up my phone to screen record the moment the call came in. 3 a.m. it rang again. Same name. Same number. This time, before answering, I looked closer at the thumbnail image on my screen. It wasn't my usual contact picture. It was a live feed of me, sleeping. I snatched up the phone and answered, heart hammering in my ears. "Who are you?" I hissed. No answer, only faint static. And then, through the static, my own voice whispered, "Don't get up." I threw the phone down and bolted out of bed, switching on the light. My room was empty, exactly as it always was. But the window was unlocked. I know I had locked it. The next day I called my carrier. They told me it was impossible for my number to call itself. "It must be spoofing," the guy said. "But how do you spoof a live feed of me sleeping?" By the fifth night, I was terrified of going to sleep. I sat awake, staring at the phone on my nightstand. Sure enough, 3 a.m. it rang. This time, I let it go to voicemail. The next morning, I played the message. It was my voice, whispering, "You're in the wrong room." That day, I noticed small things around my apartment were off. A cup I hadn't used in days was sitting on the counter, wet. My bathroom mirror was tilted slightly like someone had touched it. My closet door was open wider than I remembered. I bought a second phone the next day. A cheap one, new number, new SIM card. I didn't give the number to anyone. That night, I turned my main phone off completely and put it in another room. 3 a.m., the new phone rang. My name, my number. I answered. My own voice said, "I'm coming in." I jumped up and ran to my front door. It was still locked. I turned on every light. Silence. Then my bedroom door, which I had left open, clicked shut on its own. I stood frozen, staring at the door. Something moved in the gap at the bottom, a shadow crossing from one side to the other. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a lamp, and yanked the door open. No one was there, but my phone was on the bed, turned on, screen glowing. I hadn't left it there. It was recording video. Picked it up and watched. It showed me sleeping tonight, just now, minutes ago. In the corner of the video by my closet, a shape was moving. It looked like me, standing, watching myself sleep. I deleted the video, threw the phone across the room, and ran outside. I didn't come back in until sunrise. When I finally returned, everything looked normal, except for one thing. On my pillow was a small scrap of paper. It said, "Stop answering." I haven't answered since. But the calls keep coming, every night exactly at 3 a.m. The phone lights up with my name, my number. I don't touch it. But last night, at 3 a.m., my doorbell rang. Once, twice. Then my phone lit up. Same caller ID. My name, my number. Only this time, the notification under it didn't say call. It said, "Let me in." What would you do if your phone rang at 3 a.m. and the caller ID showed your name?